Alright, what is up everyone? Phil here for KO Gaming, and it's time for the conclusion of my top 10 worst things about modern gaming countdown. If you already haven't, I again strongly urge you to watch the first two parts of this countdown by either clicking on your screen right now or checking out the video description so that you can watch them in order and they'll make sense. Without further ado, here we go with the top 3 stinkers. Number 3, multiplayer-only games being released for full retail price, but not delivering a robust and full-fledged gameplay experience. This one has become an epidemic in the past few years. When we started hearing with the launch of this current generation of consoles that there was going to be a slew of games that would be multiplayer only, we kind of said, alright, well, it is a new generation, let's give them the benefit of the doubt. But then game after game after game started releasing and not delivering on their promise to give you a full-fledged gaming experience for a full game price. For example, Evolve launched with a pretty awesome beta that got everyone excited, but when the retail game released, only had a handful of monsters available, a handful of hunters available, and before you know it, within about a month's time, had paid for DLC to start buying new monsters and hunters. Now, most people who bought this game played it for about a week and a half till they realized it's just the same thing over and over because there's not enough gameplay content available in the retail release, and then felt, man, I really have to shell out more money if I want to keep playing this game because I want to see that new monster or experience the new abilities of that new hunter, and it became an insane nickel and dime ripoff. Well, here we are about a year and a half later, and guess what? Evolve is free to play because after that initial wave of sales, no one continued to buy the game, and it failed. Now how about Titanfall, the game from a previous group of game developers who knew all about the first-person shooter genre, and they promised a unique and robust gameplay experience. It wouldn't have a campaign, and a lot of people had issue with that, but instead it would have a wide amount of maps and tons of customization of your mechs. Alright, we all ran out and bought it, and what happened? The game ended up being pretty lackluster, pretty bare bones. It really felt more like taping two genres of game together with kind of the run and wall jumping, double jumping, parkour style first person shooter of games like Unreal Tournament from the past, as well as recent Modern Warfare games, combining it with Mech Warrior and other mech style games. Nothing about this game felt unique, it just felt like they took tape and taped together a bunch of different other things that other people had done successfully, and it really was an underwhelming package. Again, people played the game for a couple of weeks till they got bored with it and then never went back to it. So once again, another game, $60 full price, not delivering on the promise of giving you a full-fledged gaming experience because you're tired of it after only a few sessions of gameplay. To make matters even worse, there's a whole other style of multiplayer game again being sold for a full retail price tag that really just don't do anything to add anything to the gaming landscape or genre. They're really games that are made there to be more of a cooperative experience than an actual unique gameplay experience. I'm calling out recent games like Destiny, like The Division, where really the only way you're gonna get any kind of significant enjoyment out of them is by doing insanely repetitive and grinding gameplay. You're gonna be fighting hordes of the same enemy over and over and over until finally you get some loot or you complete an objective. And the bottom line is, the only way that these games can actually be experienced in an entertaining way is by playing them with a close group of friends or cooperative gamers who you're basically going to shoot the shit with, you're going to spend some social time with, and kind of have a social interaction. Which begs the question, are these kind of online multiplayer cooperative shooters actually gameplay experiences, or are they just a means to have an online hangout with your friends? And if that's the case, why are we paying $60 for the initial game? Why are we paying $30+ for the expansions when all you're doing is the same shit over and over and over, and the only reason you get any enjoyment is because you did it with friends? There's plenty of things you could do with your friends that don't cost $60, so why don't you do those instead? And that's what kind of boggles my mind about people that go so nuts over these new wave of cooperative shooters, and I say, I've been there and done that. I've played games like this before. There's nothing unique about this game. And I'll be honest here. Earlier in this year, 2016, when The Division was released, A lot of people gave me shit because I did not play the game in early March. I said, you know what, this game doesn't look like it's going to be something that's going to interest me. I'm going to skip out on it and not try it out because it seems it's like a game that's only going to be available to have fun if you're playing with friends and doing this grinding style gameplay. So I skipped the game. And guess what? Since then, not one single person has come to me and explained to me what I missed out on or why I should have played it. In fact, when I've collectively asked my viewer base, what did I miss out on in The Division? They're like, nothing. It's the same kind of grinding, repetitive game you play with a million times before, only now it's a newer one, so everyone jumped to it because it's the new hotness, and then it kind of dies out after a couple weeks because people realize it's just the same shit over and over, and it's only fun when you're playing with friends. Why do we keep dumping money into franchises like this? Why did Destiny make so much effing money when it's the same fucking shit reshoveled down our throats? I don't understand it. It's killing gaming as a whole when these budgets and these kind of development efforts could be going towards games that have some kind of a narrative where they advance the genre or they do something creative. Instead, we're wasting money on this repetitive crap that doesn't deliver, and that's a shame. Number 2, season passes, in particular, those that are being sold before the game even releases. Now, this is a practice that's become increasingly more commonplace with the digital era. Now that games are digital, you can easily release DLC content for it without having to worry about putting it on a physical disc. And now, game publishers and developers have become incredibly greedy. And I mean it when I say it, because the bottom line is, if there is a season pass or a DLC that's being offered for sale before the game even released to the retail market, it means that that piece of DLC was already imagined, the groundwork was already written, and it very well could have been part of the main retail release of the game. It's an absolute cop-out that these game developers claim it's something separate that they're working on later. It's not, or else they couldn't pre-sell it because they wouldn't know that it exists. They're absolutely full of shit. Now, the problem here is some of these season passes are being sold in $20, $30, $40, $50, sometimes even $60, doubling the price of the game. And in a lot of cases, you don't even know what you're getting when you pre-order the season pass. In recent years, there have been season passes sold for various games where you are not even promised exactly what you're going to get. In particular, Batman Arkham Knight comes to mind, where we were promised an indefinite amount of narrative-based stories, plus there would be skins and challenge maps and new characters added to the game. And then over the course of the year, as the DLCs were released, we became incredibly underwhelmed, as only 2 different narrative packs were ever released. The 2 new characters that were added were only 15-minute mini-stories, and everything else ended up being a fucking driving stage or skin for the game, which if you've already beaten it, why do you care about that crap? But no one knew that's what it was going to be when that season pass was pre-sold, so a ton of people pre-bought it, only to be incredibly disappointed. A season pass that I recently got burnt on was Fallout 4. Now, in its defense, at least the game developers of Fallout 4 didn't really promise much up front. They didn't say what it was going to be besides maybe at least one narrative expansion. And if you pre-ordered this season pass early on, you actually paid a much cheaper price than people who jumped in halfway and ended up paying a little bit more as Bethesda decided to develop more and more content for the season pass. But the bottom line is this: Fallout 4 has always had DLCs based on narrative. What I mean to say is the Fallout franchise has always had DLCs based on narrative. Take a look at Fallout 3 or Fallout New Vegas. Every single DLC was a new story introducing new characters. You got unique and epic loot. You went to new locations. And that, simply put, is just not the case with Fallout 4 DLCs. It's now been announced there will only be 5 expansions. Out of those 5, 4 have already been released, and out of those 4, 3 of them are just new ways of crafting. Whether it's crafting your own customized robot or new crafting so you can make a better house or living space for yourself. And the most recent one where you can actually make your own vault. Whoopity freaking do. I hate to say this, Bethesda, you lost track of what your fan base likes, because the bottom line is, the people who play Fallout Don't play it for the crafting. There's 5 million other fucking games on the planet Earth we can play to craft in. Fallout is one we can play for the narrative, for the awesome stories, the characters, the interaction, the immersion of the universe. Sitting in a fucking crafting bench making a neon sign is not my idea of a valid immersive experience for a paid DLC. And the bottom line is, I bought the Season Pass of Fallout 4 with the impression that this would be similar to the DLCs of previous Fallout games, of which it was not. So far, there's only been one main story-based DLC, and apparently there's going to be one more, and that's it. So I basically paid a big amount of money for only 2 things out of 5 that I even enjoyed. Again, it's a bait and switch, and it's incredibly fucking annoying. My final word on these season passes, and the reason that I don't like them, is because the consumer doesn't have control over knowing what they're going to receive. If you're going to go buy a $60 game at the store, you know you're supposed to be getting a full gameplay experience, and 9 times out of 10 you can either watch an advanced review or someone who got the game ahead of you, and you can look at a little bit of gameplay and figure out if that's a game that's your cup of tea. These season passes, there's no opportunity until the full-fledged release to know anything about these DLCs. You don't know what you're getting, and in the case of a game like Fallout 4, if you didn't jump on and get it quickly, you ended up paying more later. So how many people bought the season pass quickly to save money just to get shafted when they found out a lot of stuff in here they weren't interested in? Season passes, the bottom line is, should be a part of the retail release if they were already being designed before the game has gone gold and been released to the public. It is completely 100% an attempt for game developers and publishers to nickel and dime the customer to squeeze more money out of them for something that may or may not be quality, and a lot of the times feels like more of an afterthought than anything else. It's complete greed, and it needs to stop. The bottom line is, the only way we're going to stop it is by not buying those season passes ourselves. So you know what? Next time I see one, I'm skipping out. Number 1, games that are sold for a full retail price but are non-functional for one reason or another upon release. Now, this can actually go in 2 completely different directions depending on the kind of game that you're talking about, but the bottom line is, in recent years, when you go out and you buy a new game, a lot of the times you almost come home feeling like, am I a gamer and a consumer, or am I just a first-wave game tester? Because an alarmingly increasing number of games have been released that when you bring them home, you put them into your console or load them up on your PC, they just don't function properly. Let's take a look. First of all, a multiplayer game that comes to mind recently that was hyped for half a year, had several waves of betas, only to be completely non-functional at launch, is Street Fighter V. To make matters worse, unlike previous iterations of this game franchise, Capcom decided to make this game primarily focused only on multiplayer competitive gameplay, being bare bones at launch with offline content. Well, the servers didn't work. You couldn't even do the offline stuff without getting disconnected the first few days of playing it, and most people that bought this game expecting a robust gameplay experience barely got a handful of matches in the first week of launch and ended up completely frustrated and underwhelmed by this latest numbered entry in the series. Now, how about some games that for whatever reason had online capability enabled all the time? Games like the latest Sim City or Diablo 3. That's right, games that are single player in nature, but for whatever reason the game developers decided they would have an online always component where if you weren't connected to the internet, you could never play the game. What ended up happening was these games at launch were completely unplayable, with servers crashing and overloading, and overall consumers feeling duped, thinking that they had bought games that normally would have been cool installments of these ongoing franchises, but instead they weren't able to play when they wanted to. It took weeks and weeks for these issues to be sorted out, and it was absolutely unacceptable from a customer satisfaction standpoint. But now let's jump to the other edge of the situation here. Single player games that just simply don't work, or are buggy, or just look like crap at launch, and you're like, what happened here? Recent entries. One would be Dying Light from 2015, a zombie survival game where you're in first person, it's open world, you're doing parkour across this cool open world city-like map, but at launch the game was rife with bugs. There was clipping issues, enemies would pop in and out of nowhere and not load properly. There were crazy game bugs that wouldn't allow you to upgrade your character or would completely empty out your inventory. In my case, it gave me it took away all of my upgrade points and then gave me a bunch of points that I could only put into one skill tree. So I ended up totally having abilities in the game that I shouldn't have had early on as I was, and I just went turboing through the game because I was overpowered. I mean, it was completely unacceptable. They eventually fixed it, but by the time they fixed it, everyone who bought it at launch had already played through it, leaving us feeling with an unbalanced gameplay experience. How about Homefront: The Revolution from earlier this year? My God. Now, if you ever talk about a game that was unoptimized for consoles or had problems, this would be the one. This is one of the worst games I've ever played, simply because you could tell that no proper effort was put into making this game function on the PlayStation 4 console that I played it on. A sub 20 frames per second frame rate for a large part of it. Game bugs, game mechanics that were wonky. It just didn't feel like the game was refined or polished at all, and that it really was rushed out to the public in an attempt to be a cash grab rather than anything else. Of course, some people now tell me the game's been fixed, but I don't care. I played it at launch, it was a piece of shit then, and I have no desire to go back to it, so tough shit. I'm thinking back now a couple years ago to a little game called Assassin's Creed Unity, which is a game that is now infamous amongst gamers as being one of the most buggy at launch, entire faces melting and not loading properly, and all kinds of physics bugs. I actually had a bug where a mission didn't load and I got stuck in the ground, and the frame rate was completely inconsistent for most of the game. It's a shame because the game and the story of the game were actually pretty good. The fact that it just didn't run well on consoles, being console exclusives, next-gen console exclusives, is just unacceptable, and it was just such a snafu that Ubisoft actually collectively came out and apologized for how bad the game was and said, listen, please give us the benefit of the doubt, the next one will be better. And you know what? The bottom line was the next Assassin's Creed was better, but a lot of people skipped out on it because of what a shitbag Unity was, and that's a shame. Now, this year in 2016, we're not even getting an Assassin's Creed game, as they're taking more time to develop the next one. Good, because if I play another game like that that's a piece of shit at launch, I'm probably going to swear off the series at this point. The bottom line is, ladies and gentlemen, we deserve better as consumers. If we're going to put down our hard-earned money on day one, that game should be fucking functional, it should be working properly, it should be a fun and robust gameplay experience. And the bottom line is, we are not being respected by game developers and game publishers at all. They're seeing us as an immature fan base who are just going to throw money at anything because we're a bunch of little kids who are ravenous for new games, and it's garbage. Gaming is now the biggest entertainment industry on planet Earth, surpassing movies, television, and anything else you can think of. We speak with our dollar, and we deserve respect when we go and spend our hard-earned money on a brand new game. And when we bring home a stinker, a non-functioning piece of shit, a game that tries to nickel and dime us for everything that we're worth, we need to rise up collectively and give a middle finger to these companies that don't give us the respect and the time of day to put out a quality product by not buying again and by panning the shit out of them on social media. It has to be done. Let your voice be heard. When you play another piece of crap at launch, speak out against it. And that is it for my top 10 worst things about modern gaming countdown. Hope that you enjoyed it, ladies and gents, and if you did, please leave a like here on the video, and please spread the word amongst your friends so they can check it out as well. Please leave a comment to let me know if you agree or disagree with these final 3 entries in the countdown, and let me know what you think about this kind of countdown and if you'd like to see me continue doing them in the future. Also, please check the video description for a cool discount link where you can save 10% off any new Loot Crate subscription, as well as my Patreon. Thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks for watching. See you next time here on KO Gaming. Peace out.